Now, at the end of May, the news was reporting this a lot, and it was getting some people excited. Rates actually did see about a quarter drop.
Mhm.
They were averaging maybe about a 5%. One of the main reasons for that was that inflation data was starting to show that inflation was starting to cool.
Hey y'all, Katie here with Team Evo AZ at eXp Realty. We are so excited for season 4 of R.E.A.L with Matt and Katie, and we have so much juicy real estate goodness lined up for you for this season. Thank you so much for following us and for listening to our show. Remember, we are based in the Phoenix, Arizona area, so if you're interested in buying a home, selling a home, or you just have general real estate questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We are a valley-wide team. Our handle is at Team Evo AZ on all of your favorite social media platforms. Enjoy the show.
Hey, everybody, it's Katie and
Matt.
And we are that married couple in real estate in the Phoenix, Arizona area. We've been around for a long time. So is Ryan. I think we've all been around for about the same amount of time, haven't we, Ryan?
We have, yeah, absolutely. Since 2004 is when I started. Man, that makes me feel old saying that.
I know, right?
The year I started. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just came in right behind you guys in 2007. So between the three of us, we've seen a lot. We have quite a bit of experience. And for those of you who don't know, this is Ryan Gilliam with Waterstone Mortgage. He is our absolute favorite lender. We love having him on every month to talk about mortgagey stuff.
Thanks, Katie. What a nice introduction.
So let's get right into it. Talk to us about mortgagey stuff, Ryan. Let's start with rates.
Perfect. Yeah. The question on everybody's minds, what's going on with rates? So, as we had discussed in previous podcasts, and, just a quick summary, if you're new to the podcast, this year, the past 5 months, we have seen a spike in interest rates. They were at about the low threes last year, and they're at about the low fives right now. So, of course, the main reason for this is inflation. When inflation's high, so are mortgage rates, and inflation's at a 40-year high. So that's why we're seeing rates at the 5 levels that we're at right now. Now, at the end of May, the news was reporting this a lot, and it was getting some people excited. Rates actually did see about a quarter drop.
Mhm.
They were averaging maybe about a 5%. One of the main reasons for that was that inflation data was starting to show that inflation was starting to cool. So that was promising, and everybody was, getting excited that these Fed rate hikes were doing their job. The Fed's increasing their funding rate to tame inflation. So that was some excitement that we're starting to see it cool. But unfortunately, beginning of June, rates did kind of pop back up to the 5.25 average range right now for a conventional loan. And one of the benefits and what we're seeing, one of the good things about that is that we might have hit a ceiling. We kind of keep seeing rates hit this 5.25. They drop a little bit. They maybe go back higher to 5.25 again and drop back down. So that's a good sign that we might have seen kind of the worst of it. As the Fed continues to increase the funds rate and inflation cools, we should see rates hopefully drop. So that's about what we're seeing right now. And so if you want to, Katie, I know I sent you a chart. I would love to kind of outline historically what rates have been looking at. So this is a perfect chart to kind of show you a couple things I wanted to address. If you're listening, I could try to explain this as much as possible, but it shows interest rates from the mid 70s to today. And first, right off the bat, you can probably see that we're still at historically low rates. I mean, it's frightful to see the 80s that they were up in like the 18% range. My mom always reminded me that. That was where our house was when she bought it in the 80s. And of course, you could see here during the pandemic, rates were at all-time lows. We were seeing them in the high twos. And let's face it, that was really extenuating circumstances that led to those rates. We got a little spoiled, obviously, but now we're really getting back to where average rates have been over the past, I would say decade, which is a healthy real estate market, which is a healthy, buyer's market. So that's one thing I wanted to address here is that, hey, even though we did see quite a jump since, last year, we're still historically very low. And also, these gray vertical lines, what these are showing are recession periods. And if you listen to the last podcast, I did mention that most likely we will be hitting a recession this year. Recessions typically follow when the Fed is aggressively increasing their funds rate. And that's what we've been seeing and will continue to see probably till later on this year. And it's a scary word, but really it just means that the gross domestic product is growing at a negative rate for 2 quarters in a row. And we did have a negative rate first quarter. So if we see it this quarter, we'll officially be in that recession category. But so really what that means, is rates are high. So a lot of people, they're not buying as much, they're not spending as much, they're saving. So that does typically lead to lower inflation and getting things back to normal, hopefully. So the good thing about these periods, recession periods, is that housing is always strong, except for the 2009 era. You can see right there. But that was kind of an anomaly. We can obviously, chat about that more. But what we do see during recession periods is mortgage rates drop in these gray periods. So that's good.
Yeah.
That's going to be good for mortgage rates. Hopefully by the end of the year, we do see them dropping. And what we're really hoping that leads to is with the Fed rate hikes, with inflation getting under control, maybe a short, hopefully, recession period, that spending will start going up again as rates drop, and we can hopefully get back to quote unquote normal economy once we go through this kind of correction period.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, looking at your graph, it's interesting that you say that. You see like at the tail end or halfway through the recession period, that's when you start to see these rates drop. Which is huge for people that are thinking of refining and wondering, hey, how can we kind of navigate these times? The interesting thing that I'd really, really want to look into too is like historically, when we look at these recession periods and how it, corresponds with our real estate market, how many of these have actually had the low inventory that we currently have? And I think that kind of curtails off, projections of rates being down, especially in hot markets like Arizona, because that could, definitely, lead someone to have a little bit more comfort in paying this higher rate when possibly, there is a few more homes on the market. Because we know at the second rates drop, if we still have low inventory, what's going to happen with inventory? It's going to go even lower, so.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think that's really interesting, and for the consumer to definitely consider.
Yeah, that's a great point, Matt. And I've been talking to a lot of our buyers about that as well. They know rates are high right now, but maybe the past 2 years they've had a tough time getting into the market because such low inventory, so much competition out there, that they're really excited that there's more to pick from right now and getting in to a home, and then obviously having the option when rates do drop to refinance. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're seeing, even though inventory levels, they've gone up a little bit, but still, historically speaking, we're still pretty low. We have experienced a bit of a slowdown on our end of things, with buyers, with our listings, and just reading some information from Armless. I stick really, really close to Armless. I love their statistics. Their blog is great. And they're blaming, obviously the rapid uptick of rates, which I think is the case. I'm sure you've had some buyers that have dropped off because of that. It's just, become a little bit less affordable when that happened. Also the lack of entry level supply. Yeah. So, back in the day, I mean, I know things have changed and prices go up, and, that's a thing. We need to be okay with that. But back in the day, you could get into a $300,000 house all day long, and that was really comfortable for people. Try to find something great for $300,000 now. It's now possible. I'm telling new buyers, I just had a conversation with one that's moving from out of state the other day. And he's like, what am I looking at? Like 250, 300 for single level, 4-bedroom, don't need a pool, nothing fancy. I'm like, you probably need to look, more toward the mid to high 4s, even 500, and really be comfortable with that, because that's probably going to be what it takes to get what you want.
Yeah. And I think, like, to what you're saying, like, you have that illusion where, let's just say you have a speed limit, and that's like a normal market, and it's 60 miles an hour. Okay. And all of a sudden you're now doing 160 miles an hour. You're going, wow, this is crazy. You do that for a year. Then all of a sudden you let off the gas and you drop down to 120 miles an hour. It's going to feel like, oh my God, we really decreased, but you're still well above the speed limit.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people are just kind of, getting used to that. And to your point, I think the people that are having the hardest time digesting that are the new buyers, because think about the emotional roller coaster they've been in. It's not like they just decided to enter the market now. It's been something they've been pondering now for probably about a year. And, look at what we've seen in a year. So they're kind of probably feeling almost bipolar and now second guessing and saying, whoa, what are we really doing?
Well, and they're up against inflation too. And that's something that needs to be considered as well, on this topic is go to the grocery store. How much more are you paying now for a week's worth of groceries than what you were paying, months ago, a year ago? Go to the gas station. What are you paying now for a gallon of gas versus what you were paying months ago or even a year ago? And that's impacting things as well.
Yeah, for sure. And until like I pulled some data before we came just to see what was happening with with our inventory here in Arizona. And it's, we spiked up a little bit, a pretty good amount. I'd probably say around, 20% inventory here in the last
about 25.
Couple of weeks. But it seems like we've kind of hit like this ceiling, which is not a ceiling, but like a I don't know, it's bouncing, we'll say. It's kind of giving us that indication we're returning to these historic market trends, these seasonal trends.
Yeah.
And we saw this all the time. And, of course, we're not used to it, but for the last 2 years, it's been the total opposite. But it's really replicating that. And I think as we push further into June, it's really going to tell us, hey, what are we really seeing here? Is this a new monster, or are we actually just returning to the norm? Which is, it could be a very, very good thing for not only sellers, but for buyers, for everyone that's really trying to do this, because they're not going to feel like you're a lot of people saying, is this 2008 again?
Oh gosh.
And it's just, I know we beat that horse to death all the time on this dead horse, but it's not that. But I think it's easy for people to kind of compartmentalize their thoughts and their emotions into that. And I think that's going to fade pretty quickly, especially when they see that we're like leveling.
And I like what you said about the seasonal sort of movement of real estate. So we've all been in it for quite some time. And we know that it's cyclical. So we know that there's certain times of the year when we're more busy than others. These last couple of years have been weird. So it hasn't really followed that as far as I'm concerned. In May, this past month, we had a meeting, our team had a meeting, and we were talking about that sort of seasonal ebb and flow. And I reminded everybody that May, we experience Mother's Day, which is crickets usually in the real estate world. Don't have an open house on Mother's Day because typically nobody ever comes. It's different for Father's Day. Sorry, guys. But for Mother's Day, it's typically extremely slow. And then you have graduation season right in there. So everything stops for the grads. They're doing their thing. And then Memorial Day after that. So that tends to be, even though it's summer and it's a busier season for us, that tends to be what we notice as a pattern over the last several years, right? The pattern finally came back this year, which was really, really interesting. And again, I had to remind people like, hey, it's okay. This is the normal pattern. But Armless did report that sales volume is about 13% lower this May versus May of last year. So can kind of tell that we didn't have that dip in May like we normally do.
Yeah.
In activity.
And 13% is really not that much when you really think about what we've seen and what we've done, what we're experiencing. Then you also throw in exactly what Ryan's talking about, this, the biggest ingredient to people buying homes is rates.
Yeah.
And when all of a sudden rates spike up this high, and then you have one side of the news saying, oh, they could go up even higher, and then you got one side of the news saying it's going lower, you find yourself stuck in this quandary that everyone's stuck in, and it seems like making everyday decisions on, all right, what do we do? And that's where they're at. And it's rightfully so. But I think, at the end of the day, if you really, really look at what's happening with our inventory levels and what's out there, and who's driving this, it's people that are moving here confidently from other places that have paid a lot of money for real estate. And we're just, the Arizona native or the person that's lived here for the last decade, it just takes them a little bit longer to realize that, because it's just something they're not used to. And I think they're being a little self-critical, few people, for saying, oh, I missed it. And I don't think that's the case. Especially if you're a consumer or a buyer that's looking at a longer than a 5-year plan. If you're saying, hey, I got a family, or I'm starting a family, or I'm looking to start my real estate portfolio, or anything that's going there, if it's going to be longer than 5 years, I don't think you can lose.
Yeah, totally agree. Ryan, how about mortgage applications over the last month since we last spoke? How's it going with those?
Yeah, so obviously refinances have gone down, I think about 80% since last year. Fortunately, most people, during the 2-year period where we saw rates at historic lows, they did take advantage and refinance during those periods. So it's no wonder that those have really gone away. But purchase applications have dropped, but that's typical, like you said, Katie, seasonally.
Yeah.
Taking out the last 2 years, which was kind of an anomaly, of course. We did see usually around the May, June period when things are getting hot outside, a lot of people maybe stop their searches or applications would go down anyway. So we might just be going back to kind of like that normal market, but we still have a lot of buyers. We still have a lot of people, who kind of take the advice. I think Warren Buffett says when people are zigging, you need to zag. So when people are putting things on pause and we're seeing more inventory, that might be the time to get in, right?
Yeah.
If things kind of are shifting, where obviously the past 2 years with inventory at such low levels, the sellers were obviously in the driver's seat. Now we're starting to see things shift where buyers are starting to get maybe a little bit better deals out there. They're getting the home warranties paid for, more concessions, So a lot of people that we're working with, I think they see that opportunity and they want to get in now that things are kind of shifting a little bit.
I agree with you. It is much, much easier on buyers these last couple of weeks, month, whatever, their emotions, their mental health, where they're not having to compete so hard and having to do things that really made them uncomfortable. Waiving appraisals, waiving inspections, things that were just kind of like crazy. And, it was really keeping people up at night. So I agree with you 100% on that.
Yeah. I think sellers too, because a lot of the sellers that we dealt with throughout this last 2 years were going to be buyers.
Yeah.
So you kind of have this mixed thing of like, oh yeah, this is great. I get to pick from 100 offers, which is stressful to a seller.
Very. People don't think that. They think it's fun. It's not fun.
It's super stressful. You're trying to make these decisions, but then you know that, oh, I'm going to be on the other side of this. So you start kind of really thinking about your actions. So I think it's definitely good for everyone. One of the things that we've seen too is kind of like what we were talking about before, where what people need to see and feel to say, all right, I'm comfortable. What's that tangible item? And, we saw it where if you were, buyers that were on the fence and all of a sudden rates went up at the beginning of the year, rates shot up quickly. At that point in time, if you look at where rent prices were with mortgage prices, it was actually very, very close. They were right there. If anything, rents were a little higher than mortgages. And all of a sudden this spike happened. And all of a sudden you saw, the mortgage price go up higher than rent. Well, a lot of these people that were on the fence or really thinking about it, that gave them this new ingredient to thought. And they're like, what are we doing? Now we could go rent, we could do this. But what we've seen now over the last about 2 to 3 months is, mortgage prices went up based on that price point, but now all of a sudden rents have gone up and have now matched that price point. So now all these people are saying, well, what are we doing here? If rents are just as much or more than what I'd be paying for on a mortgage, we really got to think about this. Is this the new baseline? And I think it could be.
And I love this slide that I grabbed from Keeping Current Matters just earlier this morning that kind of speaks to that. And, of course, inflation and just about not letting rising inflation delay your home ownership plans. And they gave, 3, for those of you who are listening, I'll read it. They gave 3 sort of examples. Housing is an asset that typically grows in value. If you have cash and are expecting inflation, you want to think through where you can put your money so it doesn't lose value. So they're, pointing toward real estate for that. Your mortgage helps stabilize your monthly housing costs. Speaking of rent, I don't know. I mean, I know a bunch of landlords. I also know a bunch of people who are tenants, and everybody's raising rent, and the tenants are unfortunately having to shoulder that. which is that next one, buying protects you from rising rents. So I thought that was an interesting slide to share.
It's a great slide. I always like to say, even if you're renting, you're still paying a mortgage. You're just paying someone else's mortgage. Why don't you pay your own?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're lining their pockets for sure.
If anything, this uptick in all this is like that education and that knowledge, that tangible knowledge that's going to turn a lot of these tenants into buyers, and they're going to realize it, which is good. They need to see it, because I think a lot of people are like even surprised when they're like, whoa, when you tell them you're going to raise rent, or rent is possibly going to be raised, they say, oh, this guy's crazy. I'm going to go and see what else I can find. And next thing you know, you're getting, they call you back, or you get a call back saying, okay, let's talk about how much you're going to raise it, because they quickly realize, whoa, my expectations, where I kind of had my thoughts on where things should be, were a little bit off. And the reality of it is, this is where we're at.
Exactly. So if you're renting, pay attention to this podcast, subscribe to our channel so that you get notifications of every market update, because even if you're renting, you should know what's going on in the market. So that way you don't make that mistake.
Yeah. Or at least be prepared for it. So you're just not putting yourself in a bad spot, because you might be saying, oh, rents are low, but you could have been saving this money to become a buyer and kind of put that foot forward. But you kind of became a little complacent, thinking, oh, I'm just going to stretch my legs on this whole rental thing for a year. And then all of a sudden you find out, oh my gosh, I'm now a month out from lease expiring, and I got hit with a huge increase, upwards of maybe even 50%. That could really, really change a lot of things. Now, if you were prepared and you were kind of going forward 2 months earlier, talking to like Ryan and getting all your ducks in a row, when you learn that information, you might have been a lot better prepared to say, you know what, maybe renting isn't the right idea, and we do pick up a house.
Totally agree. Last point that I want to make, or information I want to share rather, is what's going on in the builder world. That has changed quite a bit in the last couple of months. I am seeing builders that actually have specs. I'm seeing builders that are no longer doing the waiting list, the lotteries, and that sort of thing. We'll see if maybe incentives come back, because incentives have been a little weak over the last couple of years as compared to previous years. But I really think that you can gain a lot of insight when you look at builder activity.
Absolutely. Especially in the outskirts. You start looking at where a lot of the building activity is happening. And that's going to be really kind of tell us what and where it's going.
Totally agree. Any other points to make, guys?
Yeah, we covered a lot. This has been great. This has been fun.
We did.
Sorry, Ryan did most of the talking there. We didn't get to hear your lovely voice too much. You can sing to us if you like.
Yes, he has a wonderful singing voice. I know. He sang happy birthday to me earlier this week.
Sorry about that, Katie. Yeah.
Happy birthday, by the way.
Yeah. Happy belated birthday, Katie.
Thank you guys so much. All right. If you are interested in being a guest on the show, please follow us at Team Evo AZ. That is our handle. We are on YouTube. We are on Instagram. We are on Facebook. Give us a like and a follow. Shoot us a message and let us know why you would like to be on the show. Also, while you are listening to this audio on your favorite podcast platform, please subscribe, download, and rate, and help us get this real info out to the real people. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Ryan.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Till
everyone.
next time.